Hello, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reacting to France 30, Australia 29 in the Autumn Nations series. I've just finished commentary of the game. Cracking test match, much closer than I expected it. And in the end, France stole victory thanks to a little bit of magic from Damian Penaud. I'm going to get into all of that. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and also drop a comment down below. Give me your thoughts on this game. What did you make of France? Maybe a little bit rusty. What did you make of Australia? Another game, another plucky defeat, but it is another defeat for Dave Rennie and his men. All right, let's get into it. So as I say, it is another defeat for Australia, but they played a lot better in this game than I personally was expecting. I was expecting them to lose. I was probably expecting France to be more impressive than they were, given the team that they selected, given how good they've been at home and some of the performances we've seen them put in at the Stade de France. You think about when they defeated New Zealand in the autumn last year. You think about when they defeated Ireland in the Six Nations. Just like two really good performances and times where their attacking games look superb. This didn't have that. I think there probably was an element of rust, in all honesty. They picked Roman Untermack at 10, who hasn't really played much in the top 14 at all. I didn't think he had the best of games. And there are a few other guys as well that they brought in there. Cyril Bailly, for example, another one who hasn't really played in the top 14, got absolutely pulverised in the first scrum of the game. After that, actually did a pretty good job. But maybe it was just a France team that were a little bit rusty. And as I said in the intro, they were ultimately saved, but in my opinion, by a bit of world-class play from Damian Penaud. Superb from the right winger. It was a relatively quiet game for him, but he got the ball on the right-hand side. He had the feet to beat Tom Wright. He had the fend back inside on Jock Campbell, who we'll get onto in a minute, and then finished in the corner. Absolutely superb try from Damian Penaud. But I think France can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. Look, we know how good this French team are. I think when they get to the World Cup on home soil in 10 months' time, they're going to be many people's favourite for a reason. I think they're the real deal, and I think this is a missed opportunity for the Wallabies, who beat Scotland last week in a match where you could say that maybe they should have lost when you think about the Scotland penalty right towards the end that Blair Kinghorn missed, and then obviously Nick White with that brilliant 22 to kick it out and win the game. If you think about that as a game where they maybe should have lost but they won, this is one that, in my opinion, they maybe should have won, but they've ended up losing. And this is a concern for Australia because it's a bit of a pattern. They haven't won back-to-back games in 2022. I've said it on this channel before. You look at results, for example, like the one against England in the first match of their 3 matches in England's summer tour, where Australia won. They then went on to lose the series. We've seen good performances in the Rugby Championship, particularly that one against New Zealand where they just lost it at the death. For me, it's just a side that doesn't have the capabilities at the moment of getting over the line on a consistent basis. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. I don't know if it's personnel. I don't know if it's just confidence and belief. Maybe give me your views in the comments, if you agree with that or not. But I keep wanting to believe in this Australia side because they give us performances, they give us these green shoots, and then they continue to not deliver on them. Let's get into a few other bits of the game, though, because I mentioned Jock Campbell. He got his first start at fullback. He made his international debut coming off the bench at Murrayfield a week ago. First international start at fullback. I thought he had a pretty good game. He scored a try, and again, looks like he could be a player that's going to add depth to this Australia side. We know they're still missing players, whether it be Karevi or Korobetti, number of other guys in the second row as well. So they do have players to come back in, but I just think that I'd like to see them start kicking on a little bit more, and they still seem to be stuck in the position where I'm just not sure they're going to be beating the top teams in the world. Yeah, I think that's a real element of frustration. In terms of the stats as well, it was a pretty even game in terms of possession and territory. And ultimately, I think it was just that moment of clinical world-class finishing from Damian Penaud which separated the two sides. I also said in commentary that I feel like Australia need to change their selection policy. They still have this policy where they only pick a certain amount of players that play overseas, and I just don't think they're good enough anymore to do that. France can do that. England can do that. South Africa can still afford to do that. or have these kind of restrictive selection policies. I don't think Australia are good enough anymore. I think too many of their good players play overseas, that they, in my opinion, need to rip that up. I'd be really interested to hear from Australian rugby fans on that, because you look at the quality of player Australia have playing overseas. I think they would have a seriously good international side, but they've been bang average for a while now, and they're just shooting themselves in the foot when they're not even able to select half of them. So I think it would give them a better international team. I think they'd compete more regularly. I think it would massively improve the international side, and that would be a really good thing for the game in Australia as well, because the game in Australia, for a lot of you that don't follow it, is behind Aussie rules, it's behind the NRL, it's behind cricket on a lot of occasions as well. I know they're played at different times of the year, but in terms of probably what has a bigger interest, rugby union is struggling in Australia. They need the Wallabies to be better. They need to start selecting any players they want. They can't have this restrictive selection criteria. They're not good enough at this moment in time to do that, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments down below what you think on that. Also, let's talk about France a little bit more. I think they were rusty. Romain Ntamack didn't have his best game. There was a lot of kicking. They weren't as clinical in attack until that Penaud try at the end. By the way, Lolokai Foketi's try, the Australian first try in the game, absolute worldie. If you haven't seen it, make sure you catch it on the highlights. France were attacking. Australia got the ball about 5 metres from their own try line, went coast to coast, moved it to the left-hand side. Absolutely brilliant score by Foketi. And also it was worth noting in that move, I thought very, very interesting, because Tom Wright, the left winger, it was him against Penaud. And although Penaud ended up getting some revenge on him at that moment in the game, Tom Wright had the gas on Penaud, which I really didn't expect. I thought it was going to be a really even foot race, but Tom Wright just went past him up the left-hand touchline. They moved the ball back in field to the right-hand side, and it was a superb score from Foketi. But from a French point of view, disappointing, I think, in one hand, and really encouraging in another, because I didn't think France were at their best. I think there were periods of the game where Australia were the better side, where Australia deserved to be in the lead, but France were able to get the win. They were able to get the job done. And when it comes to a World Cup in 10 months' time, which, yes, it's only in 10 months' time, but it will be here before we know it, I think these are the sorts of games where you haven't necessarily been at your best. You've been on the back foot. You maybe need a moment of magic. You get that from Damian Penaud, and you get the victory. So from that point of view, I think it's really encouraging. From the overall structure of the game, in terms of the tactical kicking game, in terms of the structure of their attack, I think they'll be pretty disappointed. Their defence wasn't as strong as well as we have seen it in previous times. I'll be interested to see the statistics for ruck speed and things like that in the game, because again, I don't think their ruck speed was as lightning fast as we have seen it in some previous matches previously. Look, they've still got the talent there. I think with more game time, they're still going to be the really good French side that we know. But on the basis of this, I think it was maybe a little bit of a disappointing performance for the French. But, I mean, Audrey, Jelonch, Dante in the centres, Penaud who scored the try, Dupont obviously at 9. They've got so much quality in their side. I wonder whether maybe even they missed Paul Willemse, the second row, who picked up an injury this week. It meant that their second row pairing was Thibaut Flamand and Cameron Woki, who were both really good players, quite athletic players. I think they probably just missed that kind of muscle that Paul Willemse gives them in the second row. So those are kind of my thoughts on the game, having just finished commentary. Really enjoyable game, a 1-point victory. But to Australia fans, at what point does being the plucky underdog and losing narrowly stop being enough? I think we're at that point. I think they need to ultimately change their selection policy. And for French rugby fans, what did you make of the game? I was quite underwhelmed by some of what I saw, but it was still that moment of magic that ultimately got the victory. And winning games when you're not at your best is a massive sign of a really, really good team and could become vital at the World Cup. Let me know what you think. If you're new to the channel, subscribe here. Drop a comment down below. I love to hear from you. And I'll see you in the next one.